I didn't hear the turnstile beep. I heard my own pulse, quick and dull like a thumb pressed against a bruise. The station reeked of hot metal and old coffee. A gust of winter air knifed down the stairwell and needled my wet hair into spikes. I was late. Again. And the morning had the stale taste of a life you've chewed too long but can't bring yourself to spit out. I hit snooze 3 times. I showered in a fog thick enough to drown a thought. I put on the same navy shirt, the same polite shoes that whispered down hallways while I lied to people for a living. Value-driven solutions, I would say, smiling with the practiced warmth of a mall Santa. But even my reflection had stopped believing me. I slipped into the first train that sighed open. Doors thumped shut with that final, merciless clack, and the car lurched. 2 minutes later, I looked up at the route map, blue and white dots in an orderly universe, and felt my stomach drop. Westbound. I was supposed to be eastbound. Of course. I laughed, a small breath strangled into a sound. Perfect, I muttered, the word sour on my tongue. One more wrong turn in a life full of them. I slumped into a plastic seat the color of old chewing gum and pulled out my phone to type the familiar apology. Running 10 to 15 late, tight connection at transfer, will dial in for mobile if... Don't, said a voice. I froze. The man beside me lowered his newspaper, an actual newspaper, the kind that sighs when you fold it, and looked at me over his reading glasses. Late 60s maybe, well-cut charcoal coat, a scarf with a quiet pattern, the kind of face that had seen a lot and complained about none of it. "Excuse me?" I said. "You're exactly on time," he said, like he was confirming the weather. I blinked at him, my thumb hovering over the half-written lie. "I got on the wrong train." He nodded, smiling with one corner of his mouth. "No, you got on the right one." I stared until the edges of the car went soft. Strap hanger swayed. A woman in a red beanie counted coins in her palm. Somewhere a kid's earbuds hissed. The man's eyes stayed on me, calm, certain, as if we were the only 2 people in a room. "Do we know each other?" I asked. "No," he said. Then gently, "But I know you." I should have laughed or turned away or moved to another seat with an apology like a shield. Instead, something in his tone, polite, unhurried, not selling anything, slipped past my defenses. "Okay," I said, phone face down on my knee. "Who am I?" "You're a sales specialist. Software, B2B. Good at reading a room, good at anticipating questions, good at giving people the story they want to hear." His eyes didn't blink. "You wake up with dread and go to bed with a kind of exhaustion that doesn't touch your body, only whatever's left of your insides." Under the cold fluorescent lights, the train hummed. I heard a paper bag crinkle. Far away, a door between cars rattled. My mouth was suddenly dry. Lucky guess. He tilted his head. "You wanted to be a teacher." My heart stuttered, not skipped, stuttered, like it hit a word it couldn't sound out and tried again. "No," I said, too quickly. "I mean, that was a long time ago. I never—" "You wanted to be a teacher," he repeated, not unkindly. "But your father showed you charts. Your mother said security and benefits, and you'll thank us later. So you learned to sell things instead of teach people. You're very good at it. You hate that you are." Heat climbed my face like a fever breaking. I had never told anyone that. Not Phoebe, not my college friends, not the version of me who smiled at quarterly reviews and thanked people for growth opportunities. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice smaller than I meant it to be. "Someone who was where you are, lost on the wrong train, on a Tuesday." Something inside me took one cautious step towards him. "You broke up with Phoebe 3 weeks ago," he added, and the car pitched slightly, as if the tracks themselves reacted. "Not because you didn't love her, because you were empty, because she deserved a person and you were a position. The truth of it was a clean knife. I felt it go in and come out and leave air where I should have bled. I saw her then, Phoebe at my kitchen table with her hands around a mug she didn't drink from, eyes glazed with salt. "You're not here, Jared," she said, softly, like she didn't want to wake something that might bite. The train slowed. A station unspooled outside in a smear of tile and posters. The ping of the chime was too bright. "I don't. How do you know this? Are you... What is this?" He folded his newspaper with a neatness that felt ceremonial and slid a small cream envelope from his coat pocket. My name wasn't on it. No name was. Only the flap. Unsealed. Waiting.
"When the doors open," he said, "you're going to take this, get off, and go where it tells you." I laughed then, the sound brittle. "I'm late for work." "For a job you hate." "That pays my rent." He nodded, accepting that fact as easily as weather. You can go to work and continue the slow death of a life that doesn't fit. Or you can go where this tells you and see what happens. His gaze softened. You already know which one you're capable of living with. The doors hissed. People stood in that subway choreography of elbows and glances. I looked at the envelope, at his steady hand, at the clean white triangle of the flap. Every rule I'd been taught about safety, about strangers, about being a reasonable adult, every rule clanged inside my head like a dropped pan. "This is insane," I said. "Almost all real change is," he said. The doors chimed again. A woman squeezed past, murmuring, "Sorry." Somewhere a phone rang, bright and aggressive. My body felt like a coin balanced on its edge. The car would move, the moment would pass. I would have made a choice by not moving at all. I took the envelope. I stood. I stepped onto the platform. "Wait," I said, turning back, questions blooming too fast to catch. "What is this? Who?" His seat was empty. The newspaper lay folded on the cushion, but he was gone. Not standing, not moving toward the next car, not blending into the knot of exiting commuters. Just gone. I stared at the doorway, at the gap between cars, at the plate of glass where his reflection should have been. The train hadn't even shuddered forward yet. He couldn't have. The door sealed, the car exhaled, and slid away like a thought you can't keep. I stood on the platform with the envelope pinched between my fingers and felt the cold creep under my collar. Around me, life resumed its anonymous thrum. A kid skated his sneaker across a scuffed tile. A couple argued softly about holidays. Somewhere a voice announced delays in a tone so weary it almost apologized. I opened the envelope with the same care you give to a cut you expect to hurt. One sheet, off-white, a hand that pressed ink like it mattered. Northwood Community Center, 847 Jefferson Street. Ask for Kendra, she's expecting you. Below that, a single line. You're a teacher. Stop pretending you're not. The station's fluorescent lights hummed. The paper was warm for my hand. She's expecting you, the note said. My throat made a sound I couldn't name. Throw it away, said the sensible voice. Go to work. Forget this. We don't follow notes handed to us by disappearing men on trains. Another voice, quieter, older, dusted with a memory of something I'd loved once, said, what if the wrong train is the right door? I took out my phone. My fingers hovered over my manager's name so long the screen dimmed. I typed, family emergency. Won't be in. I hated the lie. I hated that everything else felt like a bigger one. The city above was gray and thin when I climbed back to it, the morning sun doing its best through a sheet of cloud. I followed maps and bus lines and the small machinery of a decision you can't yet admit you've made. The Northwood neighborhood wore its history on its bricks. Barbershops with hand-painted signs, a bakery that breathes sugar and cinnamon at the corner, a church whose bell sounded like warm bread. The community center was a 2-story building with a red door and a faded banner that said, simply, welcome. Its windows were clean. Its paint was tired. On the sidewalk, an A-frame listed programs and a hopeful scrawl. ESL, GED prep, job readiness, tutoring, free meals Friday. I stood outside, the paper softening in my palm while my fear tried to bargain. This is stupid. You don't know these people. You don't know this man. You don't know yourself anymore. But I knew this. The dread I'd been waking to for years had felt like a premonition, not a punishment. The wrongness of my life had been a constant hum, and for the first time, the frequency had shifted. I pushed the red door. Inside smelled like coffee and dry erase markers and the faint lemon of a floor recently mopped. A receptionist with a sweater dotted in pills looked up and smiled like she'd been waiting all morning to smile at someone. "Can I help you?" I'm looking for Kendra," I said, surprised to hear my voice steady. "Room 3, she said, pointing down a hallway pinned with flyers and children's drawings. "Just finishing a class." I walked toward the door with the 3 taped above it. Through the little glass square, I saw a woman in her 50s, silver twist of hair, posture like a lighthouse, speaking to a semicircle of adults. Books, notebooks, hands that fidgeted over pencils. Their faces wore the focused hope of people who had shown up to change something. The session ended in a rustle. Chairs scraped. Thank yous bloomed. One by one, the students passed me in the hall with that shy, earnest nod strangers give each other when they agree, silently, to share a world with less sharp edges. The woman looked up and caught me watching. She opened the door. "Come on in," she said, and her voice was warm enough to thaw a hand. "Are you Kendra?" I asked. "I am," she said. "And you are?" "Jared," I said. I held out the paper like a passport. "Someone told me to come here. He said you were expecting me." She took the page. I saw the moment she recognized the handwriting, her handwriting, and didn't know it. Her brow furrowed, her mouth shaped into a small O of surprise she didn't let fully open. "This is my script," she said, almost amused. "But I didn't write this." Something in my chest shifted, like furniture rearranged in a room you thought you knew by heart. I stood in the doorway of a life I had not planned, and felt the air of it on my face. Kendra looked up as if deciding something. "Are you a teacher, Jared?" I swallowed. "I wanted to be." She smiled, and the lines at the corners of her eyes did what they were made to do. "We could use someone who remembers wanting that." I glanced back at the hallway, at the flyers, at the door with the little window through which a person could watch their life begin without understanding it. Somewhere beneath our feet trains ran east and west as they always do. Somewhere above us the sky made its vast, indifferent decisions. Right there in that room, something smaller and more defiant leaned forward and asked, "Are you ready?" My mouth answered before the rest of me could. "When do I start?" Kendra capped a marker and gestured to the empty chairs. She said, "How about you sit in tomorrow at 6? See how it feels." I nodded. Outside, a bus hissed. A bell from somewhere down the block told the hour. My phone vibrated with a message I didn't check. I folded the paper with the address, once, twice, and slid it back into the envelope like a promise. I didn't know who the man on the train was. I didn't know how he knew me. I didn't know why the words in my hand looked like they'd been written by the woman standing in front of me. I only knew this. My whole life, I had been early to fear and late to myself. And for the first time in years, I was exactly on time. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's face, calm, certain, impossibly sure, and heard those words again. "You're exactly on time." I lay in the half-dark of my apartment, watching the blinking red light of the router flicker like a slow heartbeat. Outside, the city hummed. I thought about calling Phoebe, about telling her what had happened, but what would I even say? Hey, a stranger on the subway told me my life's a lie and gave me a magic address. Yeah, no. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself it was nothing. A weird coincidence,
a random encounter dressed up as destiny. But when I picked up my jacket, the envelope fell out of the pocket and landed face up on the floor. The handwriting looked older now, like it belonged to someone who'd written with ink and patience. "You're a teacher. Stop pretending you're not." By 6 o'clock that evening, I was back at the Northwood Community Center. The same red door greeted me. Paint cracked at the edges. The word "welcome" faded, but not forgotten. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and chalk dust. The same woman sat at reception. She smiled like she remembered me. "Room 3 again?" she asked. I nodded. Kendra was already there, rearranging chairs in a semicircle. She looked up when I entered. "You came back," she said simply. "I said I would." Her smile deepened. People say a lot of things when the moment feels big, but not everyone follows through once it gets small again. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sat in the back. Tonight's class was different. A dozen adults, men and women, sat around tables with notebooks open. Some wore work uniforms, janitorial shirts, hospital scrubs, factory jackets, evidence of lives that had already lived a full day before this one began. Kendra began with warmth, not lecture. "All right, everyone, we're working on comprehension tonight. Remember, reading isn't just about seeing the words, it's about hearing them." Her voice was like water smoothing stone. She read a passage aloud, something about finding courage, then asked each student to explain what it meant to them. One woman, maybe in her 40s, whispered, "It means, even when you're scared, you move anyway." Kendra nodded. "Exactly." I felt my throat tighten. As the hour passed, I watched her move between tables, bending low to listen, offering quiet encouragement, and then something inside me, something I hadn't even realized was still there, began to stir. I wasn't just watching her teach. I was remembering what it felt like to want to. After class, Kendra found me still sitting in the back. "Well?" she asked. "I think," I said slowly, "I want to help." She smiled, that soft, satisfied kind of smile that makes you feel like you've already done something right. "Saturday morning," she said. "We have a long session. You can assist. No pressure. Just observe, maybe help 1 or 2 students who need extra attention. I'll be here." And I meant it. Saturday morning arrived gray and quiet. I told my manager I was still dealing with a family emergency. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. 3 years at the company and I'd been reduced to an emoji goodbye for a day I hadn't even quit yet. But the community center, though, that place buzzed. The hallway was full of voices, laughter, clattering coffee cups, real life, not corporate life. Kendra handed me a small stack of lesson plans. "Start with Marcus," she pointed to a man in his 50s sitting near the window. "He's working towards his GED. Struggles a bit with reading comprehension, but he's sharp. Just needs patience." I sat across from him. His hands were rough, scarred, the kind of hands that had built things. "Morning, Marcus," I said. "Mind if I join you?" He smiled shyly. "Long as you don't grade me." We started with a short passage, a story about perseverance. He stumbled on a few words, apologized, tried again. And then, as we went line by line, something happened. He got it. His eyes lit up like a bulb finding current. "Oh," he said, tapping the page. "So that's what that means." I laughed before I could stop myself. "You got it. That's exactly it." For the next 4 hours, we worked together. Words turned into sentences, sentences into understanding. And for the first time in years, time moved differently. It didn't drag or vanish. It flowed. When the class ended, Marcus stood and shook my hand. His grip was strong, grateful. "You explained that better than anyone ever has," he said. "You're a natural teacher." A natural teacher. The words landed like a blessing and a bruise
all at once. That night, I walked home under a cold November sky, my breath fogging in the air. Streetlights painted the sidewalk in gold fragments. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel lost. I felt found. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived 2 lives. By day, I was the polite salesman again, dialing numbers, smiling through scripts, hitting minimum targets with maximum apathy. By evening and weekends, I was Jared the teacher, patient, alive, connected. Each time I walked through that red door at Northwood, the noise of the world faded. The tiredness in my bones loosened its grip. I was becoming someone again. Kendra noticed. "You have a gift," she told me one evening after class. "It's rare, that balance of empathy and clarity. You see people where they are, not where you wish they'd be." He didn't know how to respond. Praise had always made me uncomfortable, but her words stayed with me. Then came the moment that split my life in half, the quiet before the turning point. It was a Monday morning, 3 weeks after I met the man on the train. I was sitting in my office cubicle, watching the second hand of the clock drag itself through another minute. My headset beeped, another sales call queued. I clicked mute before the system could connect me. All I could think about was Marcus's face when he understood that paragraph. Kendra's smile when a student spelled a word right for the first time. The sound of purpose. Without realizing it, I opened a blank email to my manager. Subject: resignation notice. I stared at the cursor, blinking. My hands trembled, but my heart felt steady, like it had already decided. When I hit send, I half expected thunder, some cosmic reaction to the life I had just ended. But all that happened was silence. And in that silence, I felt free. That evening, I walked to the Northwood Community Center with a strange calm. Kendra was setting up tables when I arrived. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "I quit my job." She froze mid-step, then smiled. "Good. You made room." "For what?" "For what's next." She offered me a part-time position as an education coordinator, helping manage volunteers, designing lessons, and teaching my own small class. The pay was half what I had made before. The peace, though, was double anything I'd ever known. As we locked up that night, I asked her the question that had haunted me since the beginning. How did that man know to send me here? About you, about this place? Kendra's eyes softened, thoughtful. "I don't know," she said, "but I've learned not to question good timing. Some doors open exactly when you're ready to walk through them." Outside, the sky was dark blue, the kind of blue that happens just before the first stars. And as I looked up, I realized something simple, something I'd missed all along. Maybe the universe doesn't shout. Maybe it whispers. And maybe that morning on the wrong train wasn't an accident at all. It was the whisper I'd been too afraid to hear.
6 months passed like chapters in a book I finally wanted to keep reading. Life didn't become perfect. Bills still came, mornings were still gray, but there was meaning stitched into every day now. At Northwood, I built lesson plans, helped adults who'd been failed by the system learn to read again, and found small joys in things that used to slip past me. The sound of a pencil scratching across paper, the way a student's face glowed when a sentence finally made sense. I wasn't just teaching. I was alive. Then came Julia. She volunteered on Saturdays, a public school teacher with kind eyes, laughter that could lift a room, and a patience that made everyone want to try a little harder. We started out swapping ideas for lessons, then coffee, then long talks after classes ended, sitting on the front steps of the community center while the city quieted around us. "I love that you did it," she told me one night, "that you actually changed your life instead of just talking about it." I shrugged. I got lucky. "No," she said, "you got ready." I wanted to believe her, but deep down I knew, luck or fate or whatever it was, that man on the train had been the pivot, the day everything turned. One rainy afternoon, I stopped by a small coffee shop near the center to work on lesson plans. The place smelled like espresso and rain-soaked wool. I was halfway through grading reading exercises when I felt it, a flicker, a pull, like déjà vu tugging at my ribs. I looked up. He was there. The man from the train, standing in line to order, looking exactly as he had that morning months ago. Same coat, same scarf, same calm. My chair screeched against the floor as I stood. "You..." He turned, smiled, not surprised. "Hello, Jared." I walked toward him, heart pounding. What even was that day? How did you know all that about me?" He nodded toward an empty table. "Sit. Let's have coffee." When we sat down, he wrapped his hands around the cup as though he had been here before. Maybe he had. "You found Northwood, and you stayed." I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. "You changed my life." He smiled. "You changed your life. I just helped you see where the road began." "No," I insisted. "You knew things no one could know. About Phoebe, about my father, about my dream of teaching." He didn't answer right away. He just studied me with a kind of gentle curiosity. 30 years ago," he said, finally, "I was sitting on a train, lost, miserable, believing I'd made every wrong choice a man could make. And a stranger sat beside me, told me everything I needed to hear, gave me an address, a community center. That's how I became a teacher." It took a second for his words to land. Then, like a puzzle snapping together, I understood. "So, you were me?" "I was someone like you, and I decided to pay it forward." He took a sip of coffee. "You found Northwood, and you stayed. I'm glad I got to see that. I wasn't your first, Jared, and you won't be my last. Every so often, I meet someone sitting at the intersection of wrong and ready. I recognize the look in their eyes, the one I used to have. When I see it, I give them a nudge, a direction. The rest? That's up to them." "But how did you know about Kendra? About her handwriting, the note?" He chuckled softly. "Kendra was one of my students 25 years ago. She started her own program after I moved away. I knew she'd need good teachers someday. As for the note," he smiled, eyes twinkling, "let's just say the universe has a sense of humor." I leaned back, trying to wrap my head around it. "So you weren't some kind of..." He shook his head. "No magic, just timing and attention." It was an explanation that made sense and didn't all at once. Rational enough to accept, mysterious enough to keep my faith intact. "I've wanted to thank you," I said quietly. "You gave me my life back." He nodded. "No, Jared, you took it back. I just handed you the envelope." He finished his coffee, stood, and straightened his coat. "One day, you'll see someone like you once were. Lost, restless, sitting on a wrong train. You'll know what to say." "How will I know who they are?" "You'll know," he said simply, "because you'll see yourself." He turned toward the door. "Wait, at least tell me your name." He smiled over his shoulder, that same calm certainty in his eyes. "Does it matter?" And then he walked out. Into the rain, into the city, into wherever it is people go when they've already fulfilled their purpose. I sat there for a long time, listening to the rain tick against the window, replaying every word he had said. Maybe he was right.
Maybe there was no magic, no cosmic intervention. But the timing, the knowing, it still felt too precise to be coincidence. Sometimes logic isn't big enough to hold what really happens. Sometimes the truth wears mystery's face.
2 years later, I found myself back on the same subway line where it had all begun. Different direction, different man, different life. The train rattled along the tracks, its rhythms steady and familiar, almost comforting now. I rode it not to escape, but to arrive. Every Thursday, I took this route to Northwood Community Center to teach evening classes. Funny how repetition, once a symbol of being trapped, had become something else. Rhythm, purpose, peace. I had a life again. A modest one, sure. Smaller apartment, fewer possessions, tighter wallet, but it was mine. I still woke up early, but now it was because I wanted to. I still came home tired, but it was the kind of tired that comes from giving something meaningful, not from surviving another day of pretending. I often thought about the man from the train. Sometimes I'd scan the faces in the crowd, wondering if I'd see him again. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe he was never meant to stay. Maybe he was just a moment, like a flare sent up to light someone's way, then fading once it had done its job. Because what he'd given me wasn't answers. It was permission. Permission to listen to the quiet pull of my own life and believe it was leading somewhere worth going. That evening, as I sat with my backpack wedged between my feet, flipping through lesson notes, I heard a small, frustrated sigh across from me. A young woman, mid-20s maybe, sat hunched over, clutching her phone. Her expression was a mixture of exhaustion and defeat. She muttered under her breath, "Wrong train, perfect, just perfect." Her voice was low, but it cracked on the word perfect, and something in it snagged my attention. I looked up. Her shoulders were slumped, her eyes were red, like she'd been holding back tears for a while. I knew that look. I'd been that look. The universe, it seemed, was making its next move. I hesitated. For a moment, I almost did what most people do. Looked away, let her be, convinced myself it wasn't my place. But something deeper, older, wiser whispered, "It's time." Before I could overthink it, I moved to sit beside her. She flinched slightly, startled. "Sorry," I said with a small, reassuring smile. "Didn't mean to scare you." She nodded, but didn't say anything. I waited a beat. Then I said softly, the same way he once had, "You're exactly on time." Her brow furrowed. "What?" "You think you got on the wrong train, but you didn't." She blinked, confused, then suspicious. "Do I know you?" "No," I said, "but I think I know you." She shifted, uncertain, and I saw her guard go up, the same way mine had. But I also saw the flicker behind her eyes, the part that wanted to believe something extraordinary might be hiding in the ordinary. "You're lost," I said gently, "and tired of pretending you're not. You think you've made too many wrong turns, but you haven't. You're just standing at the intersection between what you were told to be and who you actually are." Her lips parted. She stared at me like I'd read her mind. "How did you—" I smiled, the same calm smile that once disarmed me. "Let's just say someone once told me the same thing." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper I'd been carrying for weeks. I didn't know why I'd written it. I'd told myself it was just a note for someday, but maybe this was that day. I handed it to her. She hesitated before taking it. "What is this?" "An address. When we reach the next stop, get off the train and go there. It'll seem random. It'll seem ridiculous. You'll want to throw it away, but if something in you whispers that it feels right, listen."
She looked down at the paper, then back at me. "Why are you doing this?" I shrugged. "Because someone did it for me." The train began to slow. The automated voice announced the next station. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with something holy, something right. The door slid open. She stood there frozen, torn between sense and possibility. Then, just as they began to close again, she stepped out, clutching the paper like it was both a question and an answer. Through the glass, I watched her turn, searching for me. But I was already gone. I'd slipped quietly down the car, blending into the crowd. Not because I didn't want her to see me, but because the mystery mattered more than the messenger. As the train pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of her standing on the platform, staring at the paper, uncertainty flickering into something brighter, hope. And I smiled because I knew that look too. That was the moment the ground shifts beneath your life, the second before you realize the mistake wasn't a mistake at all. Later that night, as I locked up the classroom, Kendra asked what I was smiling about. I almost told her, but I didn't, because she wouldn't have believed me, or worse, she would have believed me too much. Some stories aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be lived and then passed on like a quiet gift. I used to think the universe was cruel, a careless machine grinding us down until we forgot who we were. Now I know better. The universe doesn't break us. It bends us toward the right tracks, even when we swear we're lost. Every wrong train, every heartbreak, every detour, they're not punishments. They're directions disguised as mistakes. The man from the train was never just a stranger. He was timing itself, wearing a coat, holding a newspaper, reminding me that I wasn't late for my life. And now, maybe I've become that reminder for someone else. So if you ever find yourself lost, tired, sitting on what you're sure is the wrong train, look around. Listen, because maybe you're not lost at all. Maybe you're exactly where you need to be, exactly on time.